do I go out too?
Yes.
Right.
Welcome, everybody, to our Reframe webinar series. This is webinar number 8, and I'm Carlos Garcia, and joined by Hector Garcia. We've got a couple of esteemed guests joining today. We're excited because we have a special guest by the name of Blair Enns, which we'll shortly introduce. And we also have another special guest that's joining us today. I want to give him a quick little shout out. He was part of our Reframe 2024 and really made the experience a lot better. And we have a special treat for you today. He's going to be doing some live work for us, artwork for us. And Alejo, would you want to say hi to the group? I know that half of the group probably knows you, and then a few others may want to learn a little bit more about you.
You're muted. You're muted, Alejo.
Classic mistake.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Happy to see you. Well, I cannot see you, but I'm glad that you're seeing me. I'm doing visual notes today, so I'm gonna be sharing at the end what I'll be capturing live in sketches, the main ideas that you guys are gonna be conversing about. I'm very excited to be again with you guys, and I look forward to this conversation.
Thanks very much. So let's talk a little bit about what today's going to be about. The first thing is, next slide, Hector, please, is we want to introduce you to this webinar series. So we know that there is a CPE process. We'll tell you how to get CPE for today's event. And we've got a few live events that we're still doing for Reframe. We've got a few webinars just like this one. We've been doing this series the entire year to talk about Reframe for those who are coming and get you excited about it. We'll give you some details on what's going on with Reframe as far as attendance and what we have left for you in store. Today's conversation is going to be called Beyond Conversations with our special guest. We'll tell you a little bit about Blair Enns for those of you who are not familiar with him. And then these are some of the questions we'll be discussing with him. I won't read them out loud, but you'll be able to discover and we'll be able to have more of an organic conversation about how do we position ourselves more as an expert and away from the eyes of the customers of being looked at as a vendor, and avoid some of those awkward, pricing conversations, because the theme of this year is called Pricing with Confidence. But then at the end, we'll do a small live Q&A, and then we'll get Alejo to reveal some of the artwork that he did to capture visually some of the conversation that we had today. So about this webinar series, it is a 1-hour CPE for every webinar you do attend. It's a total of 10 sessions themed around pricing with confidence. This started around January of the year, and it's every 4th Friday of the month, and it ends October 24th, leading up to our Reframe event in Miami, Florida, from November 2nd to November 5th. The resources and slides Hector posted up on his YouTube channel, probably about the next day, more or less, and usually a day after the session. But Hector will also post, and myself, any other resources that you want to have access to as we talk about any other content that you find useful, you want to learn more information about. So let's talk about the CPE process. So as we mentioned before, the 1-hour CPE for those of you that are attending for that, in addition to the value that we'll be providing today, it's going to be for 50 minutes, and you will be answering some polling questions throughout. That's going to be random, and then you will receive it within 10 business days. And if you don't get it by then, you can email Hector at qbkaccounting.com. Now, let's talk a little bit about the upcoming live events. So, big announcement. We are sold out. We no longer have any tickets for sale. And that just happened this morning. We just secured some bulk number of attendees to register. And so the good news is, for anyone who's been on the fence and thinking about it, we do have a couple of people that for logistic reasons were not able to come and have put themselves kind of on this list, a seller list. So any of you who are like, oh my God, I can't believe I missed my chance, email me directly. We do have a small group of people that are selling their tickets just because of logistical issues, and we may be able to get you in still to come to Reframe. So if you're interested in getting on the wait list, email me. And as Hector mentioned, we have about 9 people here that have canceled due to their own reasons. Now, for those of you who haven't been part of some of the other Reframe events that we do, I do host, as exactly what to say certified guide, a monthly critical conversations webinar, and it's the opportunity for you to leverage some of the content we use from last year's event, which is Influential Conversations, guided by this little purple book, the custom edition of exactly what to say for accounting professionals. And I provide you with real-time feedback. I help you think about some of those awkward conversations you have coming up and how we use that framework to help you elevate your communication skills. And if you want to learn more about exactly what to say, I share some more information around that. If you want to join, the link to be part of that webinar will also be shared with you, available in the slides and in the chat later. Anything else about Reframe, Hector, that I should add, or
No,
should we just get through this?
I'll skip the slides. Let's thank all the sponsors. So now we're almost sold out with sponsorship too. So I want to thank the headliner Right Tool. They started as a gold sponsor and they went up to headliner. And in exchange, we gave them a deal. They bought the last 10 tickets we had left. And Right Tool is actually going to reach out to their, to their best customers and raffle off those tickets. So we got a full house. Thank you, Right Tool, for helping it make it super easy to. We no longer have to promote the event. We just have to help the 8 or 9 people that can't come for personal reasons, that want help transferring those tickets to those that are still interested. So if you're interested, make sure that you let Carlos or I know. I have a polling question up. Everybody that said no, but I want to, I'll send you the inventory list so you know what's available at the moment. So thank you, Ramp and Fishbowl, for being gold sponsors. Ramp and Fishbowl are the official sponsors of the party. We have a party on Monday, a Miami chic live music, Latin food party. It's going to be amazing. Carlos and I particularly picked the Latin food that's from our home country, so we're going to be super proud of that. Silver sponsors: Finantico Software, TaxDome, Carbon, Anchor, Coral Tree, Basil, Makers Hub, Keeper, OnPay, ADP, and then our bronze sponsors: Avalara, Notify, Mercury, and Merrill. Thank you very much. It's going to be amazing. We're going to update links to all the sponsors in the slides pretty soon. Let's get started with Blair. Let me introduce Blair. Blair, you can turn your camera on. So you can wave at the screen. There you go. Blair is one of my favorite thought leaders. He's a consultant to creative firms. What Ron Baker is to the accounting profession and what Chris Doe is to the graphic design profession, BLAIR ENNS is to the advertising profession and the marketing profession. And essentially what Blair's whole ethos has been, and this has been, I'm going to introduce him. You can correct me on the characterization, but he started with an amazing book called Win Without Pitching. You can buy in Amazon for under $25 or so, or $30, and it's the absolute best book that anybody could read of any professional industry. And I always have a copy with me, and every time I go to an event and someone goes, like just now at the Right Tool retreat, one of the people came to me and said, wow, I just realized that we should replace presentations with conversations. She said that literally, not even knowing what the book is. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to gift you a book. And I showed her the chapter and goes, this book was written just for you. And that person was blown away. So I always find myself situations where something comes up where, the situation called for saying, what book would be perfect for you? This one. So I bought like maybe 13 or 14 of those books, and I always have one with me because it's a really awesome gift to give. Blair's also the co-host of a podcast or radio show, whatever you want to call it, called Two Bobs, which I listen to. It's mostly talking to the creative firms, but I find all sorts of connections to the accounting firm, and a lot of the stuff that I say that sounds pretty smart on webinars, I swipe, from these guys because they're just great at articulating challenges for professionals. Blair has a consulting firm called Win Without Pitching, and I believe still does some consulting, but for the most part is doing training for other creative firms that want to transform, the way they practice using Blair's unique point of view. And recently I joined, I'm going to call it a community. I know Blair doesn't like to call it a community. He's anal with words and labels, and I get it. But it's called The Ongoing Conversation. And basically you get, especially if you like any of Blair's books, like Win Without Pitching or The 4 Conversations, which would be the deep dive for today. You can go a little bit deeper into Blair's mind and his point of view, and it's an awesome little. I don't want to call it community, but it's also a little place to talk to like-minded individuals and evolve your thinking. So Blair, thank you very much for what you do for us. And I'll start first by plugging the book, The 4 Conversations. You can buy it in Amazon for like $35 or so. This is the latest masterpiece from Blair. Essentially talks about if you're a professional selling yourself, you may think that the only situation in which you sell yourself is that moment where you say, I'm going to do X for you and it's going to cost this much. And unfortunately, most professionals think of the moment to sell themselves is that moment where they say, this is what I'm going to do for you and this is how much it's going to be. But there's a lot of stuff that goes in that closing process. There's a lot of stuff that goes in the conversation prior to making the offer. And there's stuff that goes way beyond before, such as qualifying the customer and, and creating a brand or thought leadership for the customer to see you. And we'll talk about that, to see you as an expert and not as a vendor. And the book encompasses all that. It encompasses all that. So it's absolutely brilliant piece of work. So Blair, anything you want to add, and then we'll go right straight into the content.
Yeah, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And first, I'll add that I am so excited to be with you all in Miami in November. I'm really looking forward to this. And it's a great lineup, and I'm just honored to be a part of that lineup and looking forward to hang out for the whole event. So as you point out, the book is called The 4 Conversations. The community, we can call it that. It's called The Conversation. We're using that word here a lot. Clearly, we all agree that conversations are important. So the community is called The Conversations. You can follow that link, www.tv/convo. That's all I'll add on that. So sorry, did you ask me about the mantra?
We're about to get there. So we're done
Okay.
with all about Blair. So let's start with one of the most impactful portions of the book, which is the mantra. Okay, so the mantra is, I know it by heart, but Blair, let's hear it with your voice. Do it fast, do it slow, and then break it down for us.
So this is the expert's mantra. The expert's mantra is 4 statements that build on each other. And it's something that you might say to yourself. You don't say it out loud to the client, but before you're going into a sales conversation, you would say it to yourself. And it goes like this. I am the expert. I am the prize. I'm on a mission to help. I can only do that if you let me lead. I accept that all will not follow. So I am the expert. I am the prize. That's the first statement. I'm on a mission to help is the second. I can only do that if you let me lead is the third. And I accept that all will not follow is the fourth.
So let's do a breakdown. So why I know you took your time to think of every word in that mantra. So let's make it break it down by line. So people get enamored by it, and most importantly, they grab it or take the idea and some version of that and make it a daily habit to have a mantra and to say it to themselves.
So the first line, I am the expert, I am the prize. I am the expert. So in the book, The 4 Conversations, and in our training, and the book is really our training, the content of our training program, like short of the exercises, put out there in the world. And it saves us in training, it saves us from downloading information. We can get right to practicing. But we talk about this idea of, it's a generalization. And the generalization is there are only 2 roles that you can play in your relationships with your clients, and therefore they're the same roles that you can play in the sale with your prospective client. And one is you are seen as the expert, and the other is you are seen as a vendor. So really those are probably endpoints on a spectrum. Where do you reside on that expert versus vendor spectrum? But we find it helpful to think about it in more general terms. If you're not the expert, you're a vendor. So how do you get the client to see you as an expert and not a vendor? There are many answers to that question, but the first part is you need to first see yourself as the expert. So that's why the first thing you say in the mantra, which is something you're reciting to yourself, is I am the expert. And then I am the prize. This is borrowed from Oren Klaff, who wrote a really good book called Pitch Anything. So I wrote a book called Win Without Pitching. But it's a fantastic book, slightly different context in terms of a pitch. But he talks about this idea of in a sales situation, or so in a sales situation, another generalization, who is the prize to be won? Typically, when we're selling, we talk about winning new business, right? Winning the sale. So we see the client as the prize to be won. And typically the client sees themselves as the prize to be won because they have the money. But if you have deep expertise in what you do, then the reality is that you have more alternative sources of money than the client has alternative sources of expertise. So we can get into like, what are the bases of how do you get to this place where you feel like you are the prize? Some of it's just personal, it's innate. And some of it's has to do with the positioning, how you've structured the business, how you've positioned the business against your competitors. So the first line is really about focus. I am the expert, not a vendor. I am the prize to be won here, not the client. Now, we don't want to overplay that second idea. I'm the prize and you would be lucky to be working with me. But at the very least, can we acknowledge that if we do end up doing business together, yeah, I will be better off and so will the client. So let's acknowledge that we too are the prize. So that's the first line. It's really a function of a focused business, somebody who's built a business of deep expertise. And that typically means by focusing on a narrower set of problems or type of clients. I am the expert. I am the prize. Want me to keep going?
Can I have just a quick little thought that came up? How do we internalize that without potentially risking shifting like a little bit of an arrogant mindset behind that? Because it could be interpreted as that a bit.
Yeah, it's a good question, Carlos. And the answer to that is highly personal. So I could take an objective measure of everybody's motivational makeup, and we've done that with hundreds of our clients, and I could see how your personality is skewed in terms of what motivates you. And there's a dimension that's known as authority, or it's really power. So if you're skewed to if you have a high need for power, for authority and respect, as I do, and I've measured it objectively in myself, then it's possible that you could overplay this idea and you could come across as arrogant, aloof, disinterested, exactly what you do not want to project. If you're worried about this, that's a sign to me that you are not skewed high power. You're probably skewed to high affinity, the high need to connect with people and be liked by them. So people with high affinity needs tend to be more concerned about this. Their concern tends to be overblown, unfounded. It's the people who aren't concerned, the people who fall in love with this idea, who gravitate to that line, I'm the expert, I'm the prize. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I want to set you free to be the expert and the prize in the sale, but you're the people like me where the danger is you could play this too far. So it's a great question.
Yeah, I'll follow up with the next part, which is I'm on a mission to help.
Yes. This is a function of purpose. So I think there's an idea in here that also comes from Oren Klaff, and that is in a sale, if you can tap into a higher sense of mission or purpose that allows you to transcend the transaction in front of you, then you tap into a sense of, you show up in the sale with this moral authority. So I can explain Win Without Pitching. I can give you some positioning language around helping people who are experts first and salespeople second. But I can also take my positioning statement and I could frame it as more of a mission. I can say, I'm on a mission to change the way expertise is bought and sold the world over. So that's a mission. That's a higher calling than selling something to the person across the table from me or on the Zoom call with me. And in that moment, when I say I'm the expert, I'm the prize, I'm on a mission to help, I'm thinking specifically of that mission. I've articulated to myself. I often, depending on who's going to introduce me at REFRAME, you will hear, if I have anything to do with it, you will hear them say those words. Blair is on a mission to change the way expertise is bought and sold the world over. And when I hear the person introducing me at a talk with those words, that puts me into the mindset. I tap into my higher calling, and I'm allowed to transcend whatever's about to happen in the moment. It's like, I don't need to go out there and sell anybody anything. I don't need to convince anything. I need to just focus on the mission and shine. So when you're able to tap into a higher calling that's bigger than selling people things or growing your client's market share or saving whatever it is, if you can tap into something bigger, it's good for you. It's good for hiring. It's good for culture. And it sets you in that expert mindset in the moment, in the sale.
And Blair, you said something that I liked. Your mission is to change the way expertise is sold. We as accounting professionals, I don't want to say everybody, but a lot of us, we think that we're in the business of selling services. Now, you're not saying services, you're saying expertise. And expertise is different than service. How? Or help us make that mental shift that we are not selling a service, we're selling expertise.
So whenever I hear the word service, our service, we're in the service business, and especially that last line, we're a service business. I always think of the service sector mantra that the customer is always right. In an expertise-based business, the customer is not always right. The customer often shows up, all of you on this webinar, you know this, you see this, the customer often shows up with very closely held, strong ideas that are wrong or not in their best interest. So they show up, they're self-diagnosed and they're self-prescribed. So imagine your cardiologist thinking that she's in the service industry and the customer is always right. And you walk in and you say, hey, I have this pain in my chest. I think I need quadruple bypass surgery quickly. And the cardiologist goes, it's probably just angina, but you're the customer and the customer's always right. Lie down, I'll cut you open, right? There's a word for that in the medical profession. It's called malpractice. So if you see yourself as in the expertise business, as in trading expertise, being an expert advisor, it takes you out of the service sector. Now, that's not entirely true. It's a way to think about it, but we need to remember that in any expertise-based business, you don't get hired for the quality of your service. And this comes from my friend and podcast co-host David C. Baker. You get hired for your expertise. You get fired for lack of service. That happens all the time. So service, your how well you take care of clients, et cetera, that doesn't get you hired. You get hired because the client looks at you and says, you can solve my problem or add value in the way that others cannot. And then once you're in the relationship, you can lose the business for lack of service.
Awesome. And I accept, so I think you covered, I can only do that if you let me lead, right? So the doctor example, right? Like, let me lead, right? I decide, what you need, not you decide what I need. If you can add anything else to that, but maybe you can talk about, I accept that not all will follow. Like, why is that one, why do we end with that? Why is that one important?
Yeah, let me build on leading. Selling expertise is leading. And so back to this idea that there are only two roles you can play. You're either the vendor or you're either a vendor or you're the expert. So what does it mean to be the expert? It means that you guide your clients through the engagement. What does it mean to be a vendor? It means the client shows up self-diagnosed, self-prescribed and says, I need this, get this for me. Those vendors really are in the service business, right? You're the person who, when the client shows up and says, here's what I need, you look at it and go, maybe this is great. Glad you've modeled this out. Let me ask you a few questions. You lead in your engagements with your clients. Of course, there's a part of the business where that's kind of rote and transactional and where you're in server responder mode. But for the most part, as an advisor, you're in leader challenger mode. So your client, and I do this with my accountant, my financial advisor all the time. My financial advisor in particular, I've come to him with like, okay, I did this. Oh, you moron. Or he's never said that word to me, but I would come up, I approach these people that I pay good money to, and I'm self-diagnosed, self-prescribed. I want to do this. Can you like take care of this? Yeah, we can do that. Let me ask you a few questions. And then a few questions later, I realize, okay, this is the stupidest thing, one of the stupidest ideas I've ever come up with. You experience this all the time. So if you acknowledge that for you to be a good advisor, you need to be allowed to lead in the engagement. And leading doesn't mean dominating. You know, the best leaders are a servant leader type. They don't feel like, your clients don't feel like they're being led, but you are very deftly, appropriately, respectfully leading the client through the decisions that they're making. And if you see them making a bad decision, you're asking the right questions to get them to rethink them. So the very best advisors lead their clients. Now, the key to the idea of selling expertise, how selling expertise is different from selling goods or transactional services, is in any sale of expertise, the sale is the sample of the engagement to follow. So if you want to be allowed to lead in the engagement and do your best work, create the most value, earn the most money for yourself, then you have to lead in the sale. And that's what that means. And so you're testing in the sale whether or not the client will let you lead by taking control of the sale, navigating to the next step, always allowing for them to get their questions answered, et cetera. But as you navigate somebody through the sale, you're testing whether or not this person recognizes and values your expertise, sees you as the expert, and will be willing to let you lead in the engagement. Because if they don't let you lead in the sale, you will not be allowed to lead in the engagement.
Awesome. And
Brilliant.
Carlos, I'll let you ask the next set of questions. Thank you, Blair. It's amazing.
Yeah. So Blair, next question I had is feels like a loaded question, and I know you're probably gonna say, read my book. The answer is there. But it's really, what shifts a client's view of you from seeing you as a vendor to an expert? I know you address certain things that need to happen sometimes before the conversation and sometimes inside key moments of a conversation.
Yeah. So in the book called The 4 Conversations, A New Model for Selling Expertise, the model is this idea that we view the sale as a series of 4 linear and discrete conversations. All models are wrong. Some are useful. So I'm not saying it is a series of 4 conversations, but that's how we think about it in this model. The first conversation is called the probative conversation. It's the one that's most different from the others. And it is a conversation that happens between you and your prospect without you present. It happens through your agents of thought leadership and referrers. It's effectively you building a reputation in the marketplace by putting content out there or doing great work or sharing case studies or having your best clients speak highly of you. So that's the probative conversation. It happens without you present. And the objective of the probative conversation is to move from the vendor, a vendor, to the expert. So to reframe your question, Carlos, how do we get the objective? How do we achieve the objective of the probative conversation, which we have a name for it? We call it the flip. The flip is the moment in time when you go from being seen as just another vendor to the expert. So how do you achieve the flip? There's no short answer to that question. You build a meaningfully differentiated business. What does that mean? It means you're probably more narrowly specialized than your broader competitors in either a discipline of like various aspects of accounting or a market, the market that you serve. So that's a starting point. You narrow your focus, allows you to go deeper. And then you probably putting some sort of content out there in the world, building your reputation publicly. Maybe you are an active speaker at conferences. Maybe you wrote a book. Maybe you write a blog. Maybe you have a podcast. There's all kinds of different ways you can do this. You're effectively building your reputation in public. So that's the probative conversation. And then once you're into the person-to-person conversations, excuse me, once you're into the person-to-person conversations, any of the three subsequent conversations, it's really all about how you show up. Are you showing up like the needy vendor, or are you showing up like the calm expert?
Yeah, I think about this so much, especially when I was building my own personal brand, just to kind of share a perspective that, especially with content, I think about accounting professionals, not all, but many that I sometimes support in our coaching community. They are scared crapless of turning on a camera and talking to it, pretending that they're going to talk about their expertise. There's like one of those things about creating content, but we know that it's a necessary task in order to be able to fulfill the need to build that reputation, because we know that your content, as Chris Do likes to say, that like your social media is your live resume. And what I have found, Blair, is, because I do lean into the propensity of creating content, being on these webinars, going on podcasts, like just doing the diversity of all the content that can be done that's valuable, is that when someone finds me and schedules a call with me, I feel like 50% of the sales already been done by itself just through my credibility. And so I just
Yeah,
wanted to reinforce that how valuable that is.
there's a lot to unpack there. That part. So the first conversation, the second conversation, the first person-to-person one is called the qualifying conversation. It's the vetting conversation where both parties are deciding, asking their questions to determine whether or not there's a fit here suitable enough to proceed. When the probative conversation has happened and the flip happened, then you are largely qualified. And the qualifying conversation is about you qualifying the client. I will say something about social media, though. I'm with you, but we're coming out of this era where social media was important to build a brand of expertise, and I'm not saying you can't use that moving forward, but I don't think it's all social media, and I think AI is absolutely changing that in ways that I don't have my head around, and my more kind of knowledgeable friends in this area don't have their heads around either. So it doesn't necessarily have to be social media is my thing, is my perspective on this. I think I don't know about you guys, but more and more when I'm on a sales conversation, an inbound call, and I ask, how did you hear about me? I asked an AI. And then the follow-up question is, what do you know about Win Without Pitching? The answer is nothing other than what ChatGPT said and a few words that I read on your website. So the flip hasn't really happened. It's just I'm at the top of kind of the referral stack. This is really unusual. It's completely different from previous to like a year ago. It would be, I've been listening to your podcast for a while. I've subscribed to your blog. I saw you speak, etc. So they've already ingested my material. They already kind of see me as the expert. So AI is changing how we get found, and it's changing how much information people absorb about us before they find us. Big implications. I still don't know what they all are. I don't know that anybody does.
Yeah, sounds like the probative conversation is a moving target. The way that we want to build authority is a moving target. It's not just leaned upon one source of reputation building.
Yeah, if I'm Chris Do, I'm going to launch a YouTube channel, right? If I have those skills and I'm that good on camera, that's what I'm going to do.
So I want to ask you, Blair, I want to dig a little bit deeper. One of the things I love about stuff that you say, and you say it all the time, which is a simplification of how to build authority beyond just being an incredible content creator. Like a lot of people here think, well, it's easy for you to say you got 3 million, followers in YouTube, or it's easier for you to say you got 100,000 followers on Instagram, whatever it is. Like people kind of like forget that at some point in time, no one was born with them with followers, like that was built. But for those that are not going to start a YouTube channel or a podcast or write a book, or et cetera, there's a concept that you say all the time, which actually is the simplest way to explain the path towards authority in the probative conversation, which is to have a unique point of view. And can you explain what that means? Because I want people to feel, okay, that I can do very easily, because you don't need a platform for this.
Yeah. Imagine you're at a conference. You imagine you're at the REFRAME conference in Miami in November, and you're there with a couple of hundred of your peers, and you're out at dinner with a bunch of your peers, and you're having a conversation. You're talking shop. So you're all drawing largely from the same well of shared knowledge. So you're in agreement in almost everything. But as the dinner goes on, at some point you become aware of a difference between you and everybody else. And it's a fundamental difference. It's not in what you know so much, it's how you think about things. You have a point of view, a perspective, maybe even go so far as to call it an ideology on why or how this should be done. And this isn't mandatory to running a successful knowledge-based business, but man, if you can come up with one, it's a game changer. It becomes the secondary differentiator that separates you from everybody else who also does what you do. So now imagine you've got this point of view, and I'm fortunate. My point of view, or perspective, as we call it, is right there in the name of the business. You can win new business without having to pitch it for free, without even having to go into sales pitch mode. It's right there in the name of the business. And when coming out of the creative professions initially, that's a polarizing point of view. So some go, that's impossible. Some go, not interested. I love free pitching creative work. So if your perspective, if everybody agrees with it, then it's not valuable. The more polarizing it is, not the more valuable it is, but the more provocative it becomes. So if some people aren't repelled by it, then nobody is attracted by it. So now you've got a point of view. Now you imagine that you're on the stage, not at REFRAME, but you're on the stage at a conference that all of your clients attend. And your most highly coveted prospective client is in the audience. At the end of your talk, they come up to you and say to you, that was amazing. You blew me away. And the thing that was amazing was not the piece of knowledge about the tax code or whatever that you imparted. The thing that drew them to you, so it wasn't the subject matter, it was the ideology. In that moment, they declare to you one of two things. Number one, we are ideologically aligned. We think about these things the same way. I've thought about this the same way. I always thought it was just me. Or number two, you converted them to your point of view. Oh, I see things in a whole new way now. I worked with an accountant years ago who came up with a perspective. So how do you arrive at a perspective? You go in search of different models from different fields. That's one way. Another way is metaphors are great for models. Selling is like leading. Here, I wrote a post on this recently. The power of a metaphor. Selling is like leading. If I maintain you can read any good book on leadership, and it's a handbook for selling. Buying is change management. Buying is changing. Selling, therefore, is change management. We borrow so much from the trans-theoretical model of change in our model for how to sell, because I just deeply believe that the stages that people go through when they're buying, they are the stages of change. Therefore, the tools that people use to help themselves change are the tools that you should use to help them buy. So that's example of, those are two different metaphors that yield two different models that could be two different points of view. And that I would speak on that from the stage. And then somebody comes up to me afterwards, and it's not the closing technique that you shared, Blair. It's like, oh my God, I've never thought of it that way before. That is the power of a perspective, a unique point of view. And there's a lot more we could say about that.
Maybe let's expand a little bit more on that. And then Carlos has a really, really good question to ask. the unique point of view, it's at an intellectual level. Like it's not like, I like, this side of the aisle on politics, or I'm very religious or very pious. It has to do of you being biased about how the world should function, right? Or
Yeah.
you want people to go, I've noticed that people do that, or the world behaves this way and it's completely upside down. Thank you for saying the stuff that I was thinking that I couldn't articulate. So it's not about connecting with people's religious beliefs or politics beliefs. It's piercing them at that intellectual level, correct?
Yeah. So I had somebody recently say, she's a marketer, runs a small agency, and she said, I'm a surfer and I just draw all of these corollaries between surfing and marketing. So I am on LinkedIn. I am the person that talks about, I forget what the language is, but basically marketing is surfing. And she says, as soon as I went all in on that, my business just blew up. David Baker and I did a Two Bobs episode recently. He's got lots of really interesting hobbies. One is he teaches motorcycle racing. And so he came up with this topic for us to talk about. We take turns interviewing each other, and his topic was things I learned about business from motorcycle racing. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a poor episode. And we got into it, and he had like 10 different points: target fixation, slow down to speed up, all these ideas. It was like, oh my God, you could build a business around this metaphor. Simon Sinek, who wrote Start With Why, he has this great line, and it speaks to the power of having a perspective, unique perspective or point of view. He says, don't go looking to sell to people who need what you have. Look to sell to people who believe what you believe. And I've just completely onboarded that. If somebody reaches out to us and wants to talk about sales training for their team, and they haven't read any of my books, they haven't absorbed the content, it's like, we don't even have the conversation. It's like, all right, so next step is you've got some homework. You go read the Win Without Pitching Manifesto. It's 24,000 words. You can read it in 2.5 hours. At the end of that book, you will go, Win Without Pitching is the approach for us, or nope, on to the next one. And we're okay with either. But you've got some homework to do. Go read the book. And then if you come back, then we can have a meaningful conversation. So once you put your point of view out there in the world, you can use it as a filter to separate the good clients from everybody else.
That's very powerful. One thing that happens in our industry a lot, Blair, maybe in the creative world, it happens too, that we look at the framework of the 4 conversation. I think about it's an opportunity to like kind of practice how to better position ourselves, because it's a first impression that we get to create. Many accountants tend to have a lot of existing books of business clients that they took on when they first started 10, 20 years ago at rates that were whatever that accountant version that was. And they struggle to be able to position the value of a price increase conversation now that they are more equipped, they have licenses, authority, expertise, knowledge. So I guess, looking at the frame of this question, how do we work in our probative conversation when talking to existing clients, especially in the context of raising prices?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think of it as having the probative conversation with the existing client, because that ship has sailed. But that's just a semantic argument. Your point is a valid one of like, how do we reposition ourselves with our existing clients? And the first answer is it's hard. So the way you think about it in your business, this would be different, because I'm used to dealing primarily with creative businesses and marketing businesses, but we also do a lot of work with financial planners, and they'd be similar in that your relationships tend to last a long time. Whereas in a typical marketing firm, you're cycling through clients, like the average tenure of a client is somewhere around 3 or 4 years. And that's actually, there's a lot of reasons why that's good, because you reinvent yourself one new client at a time. Now, it's so how do you, you buy the business, take over the business, or land the client back in the early days when you are over here. offering these services at this quality, this breadth, this level of experience. And then time goes by and they're just locked in. They still think of you the old way. You have a meeting with them.
The other thing is, sorry to interrupt, is
Yeah, go ahead.
we sometimes internally think they think of us that way, right? We
Yeah.
might create the story in our heads as well.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah. So have lunch, have an hour-long meeting with your client, whatever the frequency is, and say, hey, in our next meeting, I want to have a conversation about some new offerings. And basically point out, okay, when we started working together, this was the price, this is what we did. And then I just want to let you know that we've changed a lot in the last few years. We've evolved. We've got different service offerings. We've got different experiences. We've got different packages that you can buy from us. Now, like the package you're on, and I'm using that word package deliberately. The package you're on, it's like, doesn't exist anymore. And we all experience this, right? I just looked at a software subscription I had, and it's like that. Now that you have this thing that doesn't exist anymore. And you can say, listen, we'll continue to honor that because we appreciate what a good client you are. But I think once you get to a certain capacity, like the certain capacity target, you should start to cycle through some of those early clients, and you decide when that is. So you might say you can stay on that package, but the price goes up. But more importantly, I wanted to share with you the breadth of our capabilities. So here's an example of somebody, and you don't have to say the client. Here's what we do for them, different services than you. Here's the price they pay. Here's another client, different services, different price they pay. Here are the packages that we have moving forward. And then you make a decision. Are you okay if this lower end client goes away if they don't pay the new price or move to a higher package? That's your decision. That's how I would have you think about it. You have a meeting and you say, we've been working together a long time. We've really valued your business. We've changed. Let me show you how we've changed. Here's how we work. Let's talk about the options that you have in working with us moving forward.
And we could sprinkle some of the value. Here's the value you get too, right? And continuing to working with us. Because what tends to happen in firms that are looking to become more modern in terms of, upgrading their software so that they can secure clients' data or, be able to have a portal. Like client is somewhat experiencing the evolution of the firm indirectly as they're noticing that things are improving in the experience, there are a lot shorter wait times. So it's a nice way to also articulate. You've probably noticed here are some of the things that have also changed along in your experience in our evolution, so that at least presenting the why of the price, it's something the client can actually factually concur with, and not just I'm just like changing the price on you.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, this idea you've probably noticed. No, I didn't notice that, but now that you pointed out, I see the wait times have changed. So it's taking you less longer. Shouldn't it be cheaper? I'm sure we're going to have a conversation about the impact of AI on pricing when we get to Miami.
Certainly.
Yeah, that we will have that. It will be implicit that AI is throwing a wrench in the whole thing. Blair, I know you talk to a lot of marketing folks and creative folks where, for the most part, what they are engaged in helping people increase their revenue. And it's easy to make a really strong connection between, the performance or the outcomes of their work, pre-engagement and post-engagement. Accountants generally try not to tie themselves to a revenue increase, mostly because we're horrible marketers. So we don't even want to make the claim that anything we'll do will help them with marketing. We're bad at marketing ourselves. We're bad at pricing ourselves. How do we even pretend that we can help people with that? Generally, there's stuff that we can do to save people money. So it's increasing the bottom line through cutting, not so much through the exciting part, which is increasing revenue and growth. And many times it's neither revenue growth or expense cutting. It's just protecting their livelihood, protecting their assets, protecting their future, securing their retirement, making people feel less overwhelmed, making people feel more confident in their decisions, making them better business owners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. how do we approach value conversations where we're trying to tie the price or the price increase to the value that we create, when the value that we create is so hard to measure and so intangible?
Yeah, I have a couple of things to say about that. It's a great question. I'm glad you tied it to the value conversation, because often the question is about what value statements can we craft? How do we exclaim our value? And the value conversation is the third conversation. So after you qualify somebody in, you move to value conversation, where you're trying to determine the value that you can help to create. And you're going to see patterns in your clients' businesses, and you will understand that generally speaking, we tend to provide value in these different ways. But you really want to let go of that. And in a value conversation, which, you know, in the way you guys are selling, you would go right from qualifying in, good fit. You could do that quickly. Let's move to a value conversation. Your job is to uncover the value that the client is seeking to create. This is a total game changer. Like, we sometimes make the mistake of thinking that we should take this marketing language into sales, and we should be making these assertions. We should be we should be saying about our offering. I think that can get dangerous. I think you can start to sound like a scripted sales robot, and your focus is on the wrong thing. Value does not exist extrinsically in the world. Value, like we all know the line, beauty isn't in the eye of the beholder. All value is effectively in. So at the end of the day, value is nothing more than a feeling. It's the dictionary definition is a sense of regard. So the value is in the person. It's in the client. You need to uncover what is the value that you're seeking to create. And then you frame the conversation around moving forward with you to help them create that value. I said we do a lot of work with financial planners. And I noticed fairly early on that so many financial advisors think that the value that they create for their clients is financial. And it's not, especially when you get to the higher net worth individuals. It's like, don't lose my money. But it's not really rate of return. It is reduced complexity and the ability to sleep at night, like two broad categories of value. It's like, just, I'm going to make your life simpler. And you're uncovering this in a value conversation. And what I'm hearing you say is you want your business to be simplified. You want to be able to go to sleep at night, not worrying about these things, etc. Is that correct? That's correct. Like, so a lot of the you do create economic value in what you do, but so much of what you do is what's known under the bucket of emotional contributions to value. Just think of it as personal value or emotional forms of value. And do not get distracted into thinking that this is purely an economic transaction. Right? You, through the right questions, you will uncover what this person wants to be true in the future. And then you make sure you're framing the conversation around, I'm going to help you make this vision of what we call your desired future state become a reality. And let go, going into the sales conversation, let go of all of your ideas, all of your assumptions around what you think this client values. And so the value conversation, it's a simple 4-step framework. I think it might be the second most valuable skill you ever learned in your career after your domain expertise of accounting. It's a complete game changer, but it's hard to do. And it's hard to do because your subject matter expertise gets in the way. You start asking the client about what they want to be true in the future, what their challenges are, what their goals are. They start talking, and your subject matter expert pattern matching brain kicks in and goes, I've seen this before. You're just like these clients. I know what you want. I know what you need. I know the price you have to pay to get this. And you quit listening. So the key to the value your subject matter expertise gets you to the table so that you can have a value conversation, and then it gets in the way. So for you to become a value conversation master in this moment, you have a 4-step framework. You let go of your subject matter expertise, which is really easy to say and really hard to do. And you put aside your solutions, your packages, everything. You lean into the client. What do you want? step one, what do you want? Okay, now that I know what you want, what are the metrics of success? What are the things that we will measure to prove that these things have happened? Okay, now that we have the KPIs, the measure, what's the step three? What's the value of us hitting these KPIs and you getting what you want? Okay, we got economic value. What about you personally? Tell me about how this is important to you. Oh, I get to sleep and blah, relax. I would kill and I would have any, I'd be able to go away on vacation and just, okay. If I can, step four, set pricing guidance. There's a lot of nuance here. So I'm not even going to get into it, and we'll talk about it in Miami. But okay, now that I know what you want, I know what we'll measure, I know the value of this to you. If I could do this for these prices, does that is that an investment you think you'd be willing to make? And I say these prices, we start with a big range, we get the client to narrow it, etc. But that's effectively the value conversation. Now, you have to have this conversation without getting into the details of what you would do. And that's the hard part, because your brain, your pattern matching brain, wants to jump ahead to your products, your solutions.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Let's Carlos, I'm gonna do, because we're almost at the end of the hour. So Alejo, I am going to make you co-host so you can share your screen. This is the little surprise portion of the event. We have an artist who's a live sketcher who came to Reframe last year, is coming to Reframe again. And this guy listens, writes, and draws at the same time. So you want to share your screen, Alejo? Do you want to do like, oh, it's in your iPad?
Yeah, I'm on
So
it. I just want to make sure that you guys are seeing it well or not
yes,
pixelated. I can
yes,
share on another. Yeah, okay, cool.
yeah.
So far what I have is the experts mantra, the four of them
Look at that.
right there. And that's Doctor Strange, because mantra is kind of like sort of reflective thing. We talk about service businesses between, like, you didn't mention, you know, kissing people's boots, but that's what I thought. You're right. I'll do whatever you ask me to, versus diagnose as a doctor. And then we talk about the flip, going from before, where you specialize with a market content or an approach, and then after that, how you show up. I haven't drawn the thing there. Unique point of view. There's going to be some people in here, and there's different opinions. You stand out because you talk about different things. You see it differently. And here I just have notes. So I'm working on the drawing here of a guy who is deep diving into the person's brain to uncover actually what is the client's value. So
That's beautiful.
Good job.
Bravo.
Nice job.
That's incredible. So we're gonna, everybody it's in our email list. When Alejo's done, we're gonna give you this little gift, a PDF that you can print, put it on the back of your computer, and remind yourself of, you know, this is now canon, Reframe canon. Okay, Blair, thank you for making this now part of Reframe. Do you have a few minutes to answer some questions, Blair, or you have a hard stop?
No, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So this is a question that hasn't been asked on the live chat yet, but I think as the questions come in, we'll answer them. I had this question for you, and you know, let's just assume that you only got 2 minutes to answer. How do you handle the too expensive objection, right? Because you were talking about the emotional piece of it, and a lot of us that are small practitioners, sometimes when people say that's too expensive, we hear you as a human being are not worth what you're saying you're worth, and it pierces through in an emotional level. What's the best way to act with a tone of discernment and be chill and cool and zen the way people are describing your style in a situation like that?
Yeah, so there's so many things you could do here. I immediately think of Chris Voss, and you know, too expensive? All right, say more about that. Or you could be more direct and say, too expensive compared to what? Compared to, I could get this, I could get the same thing for, so here's what I like for my clients who are in the graphic design space. Let's say they put forward a price for a logo, and let's just pick a number. It doesn't matter what the number is, but I'll say $10,000. I mean, it could be $1 million, it could be $10,000. And the client goes, I can get this for 5,000. The response I like is, oh, you know what? There's this great website called Fiverr. If price is your thing, you can get this for $5. You can, I swear to God, you can get ChatGPT to design a logo for free. You don't need me at all. Now, this is me. To me, I think selling should be fun, and if it's not fun, you're not doing it right. So this is just becomes a little bit of a game. They're clearly saying that, you know, they're a price buyer. They're seeing an apples to apples comparison, and they can get this from somebody else. And there's no discussion about like the quality of that other person. So you can lean into it without being quite so facetious. You could say, yeah, well, we're definitely not the cheapest option available. There are lots of others that are more affordable to you, that are cheaper than us. It sounds like price is pretty important to you. Get them to talk more about it. So we could try to overcome the objection. They're different, and there are different ways to do that. I have one technique I like in particular, but I am a big fan of just putting so an objection is a reason not to do business together, or it can be seen as a perceived gap between what the client is looking for and what they see you as being able to provide, right? And so we used to teach technique for overcoming objections, and then one day it occurred to me that the dynamics of objections are such that when one party raises them, it's incumbent on the other party to address them, and it does not matter who's who. So if the objection, the potential reason not to do business together, becomes obvious to you before the client puts it on the table and asks you to address it, my advice is you put it on the table and you ask the client to address it. So let's say you're getting a sense that there's a price objection. You might say, hey, before we go too far, it seems to me that price is really important to you. You need to know we are not the least expensive option out there. So you raise the objection and then you pause. This is all in the book. You embrace the objection and then you embrace silence. Right? So you put the objection on the table, ask the client to speak to it. You might say, hey, before we get too far, your business is considerably smaller than most of the businesses that we serve. I'm a little concerned about your ability to afford us, or I'm afraid we might be more than you're willing to pay for. To put the objection on the table, ask the client to address it.
Blair, one thing that comes up a lot in this industry, and I wonder if it happens in your world too, where whoever the decision maker is, or maybe a decision maker from a different department, is they might see marketing or they might see accounting as a resource that's like in compared to all these other expenses, like not like how do they can't fathom spending so much resources on something like that. Like there's somewhat of a perception. It's like, but it's just bookkeeping. It's just data entry. It's just. And maybe you ran into but it's just a logo or it's just an X. And that sometimes is what might be their too expensive version of an objection as well. Any ideas from that?
Yeah, I mean, we do have to acknowledge that some of the services, and I don't know the accounting profession all that well, but we use two accountants, and I, there are things that I have had ChatGPT do. Our accountant gave us a price, and it's like, this is make work. This is regulatory capture or make work. Like, ask ChatGPT. Okay, that's a good answer. We're going with that. So we do have to acknowledge that some of the ways in which we have historically delivered value are under threat to the benefit of everybody, even though it doesn't feel that way right now. What I mean to the benefit of everybody, even you, is you have to look at where you're truly, really adding value, right? And it's more of a concierge level human being, expert advisor that gives the sense of peace of mind and control. So we have to kind of elevate accounting more to like clergy, like it's more of professional service, more of an not a professional, more of an advisory service and less of a transactional service. I forgot what the question was. I went on a little tangent there.
Yeah, no, it's like it's just marketing, Blair. I mean, it's just a logo. It's just do you run into someone who's diminishing the true value? Maybe there's a lack of understanding, there's an ignorance, there's a gap of knowledge for them to understand how to justify an X amount expense on
Yeah. So
a
if somebody
campaign.
comes to me and says, that's just sales training. It's like, that's win without pitching sales training. You can think of sales training as commodified and you can pay X dollars per person, but it's like, I'm not, somebody made the comment in the chat that it's like that, well, that's somebody who says that that's not your customer. That's not the customer you want. You know, there are price buyers who are just going to look at what you do as a commodity and they're simply going after the lowest price. And that's why I'm fond of saying, listen, we're not the lowest price option out there. When I was young and more arrogant than I am now, in the last sales job I had, I used to say, in a sales call, I would say, we're the most expensive for this. I was selling graphic design. I would say, we're the most expensive firm in the market. And then I would say, and if you find somebody who's more expensive than us, do me a favor and let me know. Like, that's a little bit overplaying the idea, but I'm just saying there is, economists use this term of signaling. A price contains so much information. It sends so many signals about quality, about availability, about scarcity, all of these things. You're going to hear the price objection from people. And you want to win a business based on price buyers? Then if you do, then you really need to embrace automation, right? You need to provide a lowest, you get in that race to the bottom that's going to require a huge amount of volume to make business, to make money, where you can do it for less, or you move the other way. And it's more white glove, concierge level service. I'm an advisor to you, not just an accountant.
That's right. I think creating those different places where they can go, the paths, to not to plug a different resource, but one of the ones that I enjoy the most from Phil's book, exactly what to say. It's called the way that I see is you have three options. And if we use the accounting context is, you could use an online, QuickBooks or live solution, which will probably give you X, Y, or Z. But here are some of the risks you might run. You could also go to your cousin and have them do your bookkeeping for you. That could work. That is possible. But here are some of the risks that you might run. Or you could hire us, who've been doing this for 20 years, who are QuickBooks certified, who've seen scenarios like yours, right? And help the person choose their adventure and know what they're risking, where they go. So I think part of that, to your point, is leadership, right? We need to lead sometimes that conversation to help that person reach a better decision.
Yeah. Well handled. I love that.
Blair, I want to respect your time. I know that you have a hard stop pretty soon. If you want to add something else, go ahead and do it. Or no, we can say goodbye, or I could prompt you. And by simply saying that REFRAME's goal is to rebrand the accounting profession so it's seen as the most creative, innovative, and forward-looking of all professions. How the heck do we do that? So I came up with a goal that I don't know how to reach. We need to plug into brains like yours. How do we rebrand the accounting profession so it's seen creative, innovative, and forward-looking?
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's a great question.
Come to Miami, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I'm really looking forward to not just the talk and meeting everybody, but the conversations in between. I'm really looking forward to it. All right. Thanks, Carlos and Hector, and thank you everybody else. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Blair.
Thank you, Blair. And I want to let
Great job, Alejo.
Yeah, thank you, Alejo. I want to let everybody know that when Carlos and I sat down and said we're going to put a conference together, I gave Carlos my short list of people that I was hopeful that I could eventually have in an event like mine, and Carlos did. And Blair, you were on that original list. So we're super excited that we're scratching one off from my list of heroes. Thank you so much. We'll email
Thanks, guys.
everybody Alejos graphic when he's done. And this recording will be in YouTube. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.